So have you ever been playing a game and you had an idea that you thought was a great idea at the time, but then once you started to implement it, maybe halfway through your plan, you realized it really just wasn't a good idea? Well, today we're going to be looking at the top 10 worst plans in chess so that you can stop doing these things and start focusing on plans that make more sense. Now, before we get into the video, I want to switch over to full screen. And some of you may have noticed this right here behind me. Let me see if I can put it on the camera. How about like this? This is a better angle. This is a vase, and it's full of pawns, okay? That's all it is, just chess pawns. I took a bunch of old sets, and I took out all the pawns, and I filled this vase with it. And I'm going to give you guys a chance to win a prize if you can guess how many pawns are inside of this vase. So I've already counted it. I know the answer. So what I'd like you to do is comment below with your guess of how many pawns you think are in here. And if anybody gets it exactly right, I'll give you a coupon code for a free course, any course from my site. So I'll reach out to you if you do get it exactly right. I'm going to say 1 vote per person or per account. So don't comment like every number from 1 to 1,000 because you will get it right if you do that, but I won't count it. I'm just going to take the first comment that you say. And by the way, if nobody gets it this week, we'll just keep trying until somebody gets it, and then maybe I'll switch it up and put some other pieces in there or get a different shaped vase or something like that. But I thought this would be fun, so go ahead, have a look. Like I said, it's just full of pawns, and comment below how many you think are in here. All right, having said that, let's get into the video. All right, so number 1 on our list of the top 10 worst plans is trying to activate your rooks from move 1. So this is something that you see a lot of brand new players when they first start playing chess. They learn how the pieces move. They don't know any type of strategy. Nobody told them that they should control the center. You'll see a lot of players move one of these 2 pawns or sometimes both pawns and start trying to bring their rooks into the game really early on. And I guess the idea is the rook seems like a pretty powerful piece, which it is. You're not wrong in thinking that, but activating it so early is really bad. And the most obvious reason is that you can't even actually activate it if your opponent doesn't let you, right? If you try to bring it up, you're just going to lose it for the bishop, which is a bad trade. And if you do the same thing over here, again, you can't even really activate the rook. Now you could push it again, but here the queen is covering. So maybe you could try this one. But again, it's like, even if you get it there, okay, what are you going to do? You don't want to move it to any of these squares. So it's kind of just sitting over there. A lot of times it becomes a target, and this strategy will not work out well in the long run. So please don't try to activate your rooks super early. They are very good and powerful pieces, but they're better at the end of the game. And it's almost always better to castle your king and activate your rooks in the center of the board after you've already developed all of the other pieces. All right, number 2 on our list of top 10 worst plans is another thing that you will see a lot of beginners do. It's bringing out the queen extremely early with the idea of hunting down pawns, maybe going for a quick checkmate, or who knows what else the plan might be, but bringing out your queen super early and thinking that that's the only piece you have. If you look at some very low rated games, you will see games that happen like this. The queen comes out, and the next like 15 moves, it's just the queen kind of bouncing around the board, trying to capture things, sometimes successfully, sometimes, most of the time, not successfully. It usually doesn't turn out well. And if your opponent is prepared, even if you do have a couple of tricks up your sleeve, it's very easy to stop. And at the end of the day, you just waste a bunch of time moving your queen around. It doesn't really help you. So please try to develop your other pieces first, and only then should you bring out your queen, unless, of course, there's a very obvious reason to do, to bring it out. So if your opponent is throwing pieces away, that would be an exception to the rule when it's okay to use your queen and take the free piece. All right, the next bad plan in chess looks something like this. What do you notice about all of Black's moves? That's right. Black is only moving pawns. Some people mistakenly think that because these pieces are more valuable, which they are, that's true, but they think that because they're more valuable, you have to be very careful with using them, and it makes sense to just kind of push your pawns forward and use them to kind of pave the way for the other pieces. But the problem with that is these pieces are not very effective on the back rank. They need to be in more active squares, and this is very rarely a successful strategy. I do not recommend this. Please develop your pieces and don't only make pawn moves. Actually, as a general rule, 2 to 3 pawn moves early on is probably plenty, and then you really need to be making 4 piece movements, probably castling, probably putting your queen and rooks on active squares. You really shouldn't be making more than 2 or 3 pawn moves unless there's something of an exception in the position. All right, the next bad plan that we're going to look at is moving the f-pawn too early or in the wrong situations. Now, the most obvious way that this could be bad is the 2-move checkmate. This is called fool's mate, and you lose the game in literally just 2 moves. And it very, obviously shows part of the reason why f3 is a bad move. It opens up your king on this diagonal. You do have the g-pawn, which can block, but if that, for whatever reason, moves forward, it's just game over. So generally speaking, do not move this f-pawn, whether you're white or black, unless you have a really good reason to do so, or if you're playing a particular opening where that's needed to support e4. There are some openings where that does happen, and a lot of the times you need your bishop on e3 if you're going to do that, because it kind of fills in all of these weaknesses that are created by moving that pawn. So if you are going to do it, make sure your bishop's on e3, but otherwise just keep that pawn back there. You really don't need to move that. You have a lot of other better options at your disposal. All right, the next plan that some people will adopt is to immediately trade their bishops for their opponent's knights. Sometimes people think that knights are tricky. There's so many forks and they can jump over things, and they're just such an annoying piece that their plan is, you know what, I'm just going to trade them off right away so that I don't have to worry about getting forked the rest of the game. And while you do solve some problems by doing that, generally speaking, a bishop is slightly better than a knight. And when you give up the bishop pair for 2 knights, it's actually a significant advantage. And so already black has the advantage in this position. And that's generally speaking not a great idea. So try not to give them up just for no other reason. Of course, there are times when it does make sense to trade your bishops for your opponent's knights, but just to immediately do it, it's usually not worth it. All right, the next bad plan has to do with fianchettoing the bishop. Now, first of all, fianchettoing the bishop is fine. There's nothing wrong with this. This is actually a good idea. There's a lot of very solid openings that have this. King's Indian defense, King's Indian attack, the Grunfeld, on and on and on, where you fianchetto either on this side or on the queen side. But the problem comes in when you voluntarily give up that bishop for your opponent's knight for really no good reason. Like, this would be a bad idea, because now these squares along these white squares here are weak, and you don't have the bishop to help defend them, which normally when the fianchettoed bishop is just sitting there, it's doing a great job of attacking and also covering up those squares. Now you have a serious problem. And actually, this is also true even if you have the option in some cases to trade your bishop for your opponent's rook. It might still not be the best idea. So let me give you an example of that. Just some random moves here that I'm making just to illustrate this point. If black plays the move knight to e5, you might say, oh, well, there we go. I can take the rook with my bishop. I've succeeded. My fianchetto is working, right? But if you take that, you're actually in a losing position now. And it has to do with the fact that there are all sorts of threats that black has here. And how are you going to deal with it now that you've given up your light squared bishop? You really can't. You're in big trouble. Your king is probably going to get checkmated, most likely. And it has to do with the fact that you needed that bishop to help defend those squares, right? Like if we go back a couple moves, white's position is totally fine. There's lots of good moves for white here, but as soon as you trade that bishop for that rook and black's queen gets involved, gets control of the diagonal, you have the knight and bishop coming in, it's not looking good for white. So try not to give up those fianchettoed bishops for just any piece, even a rook in some cases. So keep that in mind. All right, so the next bad plan has to do with when your opponent pins your knight to your queen. So let's look at an example of this. We're playing the game and our opponent plays bishop to g4. Now, first of all, this is a bad move because it's not defended by the knight on f6 here. We actually have a tactic available. Bishop takes f7 check, and we can just play knight g5 and win the bishop. Just FYI. But what some people will do when they see this is get very annoyed by this pin that they want to get rid of it. So they'll play the move h3, hoping that their opponent takes the knight, and then they can just trade and don't have to worry about the pin. But what most people will do is go back to h5. And again, a lot of times people are still annoyed, and they want to play g4, just to get rid of that bishop. By the way, there's another tactic here. Knight takes e5 is a really nice one, sacrificing the queen because you have checkmate. So just wanted to point that out. But going back to our example here, g4, chasing it away. The problem with this, okay, the problem with this is that we've already castled. And it's usually not advisable to do this when your king is over here, because you're exposing your king and it's just not worth it. The trade-off is just not there. And if you continue with your plan of like, that bishop just really annoys me, I'm going to go and get it, guess what? You're in big trouble. Your king is now really in trouble. And after a move like queen d7, black's queen is coming in, and I don't know how you're going to save your king at this point. So there are a lot of other options for defending against pins like this. I'll link at the end of this video. I'll put a link to another video that talks about this in more depth. I give you some options and some different things to think through. But generally speaking, just throwing the pawns forward if your king is already there is probably not the solution you're looking for. All right, the next bad plan in chess is blocking your bishops before they had a chance to develop when you don't have to. Okay, so an example of this would be playing a move like e3 followed by d3. We've blocked the bishops. We didn't have to. There was no threat that we really had to deal with, and that was the only option we had. We just voluntarily put the pawns there. And now how are we going to get our bishops out? Yes, you can put them here, but this is a very, very passive setup. And usually it's much better to have them on c4 or b5 or d3 doing some, more valuable things, right? These are much better diagonals than just sitting over here. So try not to block in those bishops. And actually a more common way that this happens would be something like this. Somebody attacks your pawn and black would play a move like d6, trying to defend the pawn, but they're blocking in the bishop. And where's the bishop going to go? And so a much better option would probably be knight c6, right? This is why this is a more of a mainline opening as opposed to d6, right? You keep options open to develop that bishop to a much more aggressive diagonal. All right, so try not to block in those bishops unless you have to. All right, the next bad plan is launching a flank attack before you are developed. So usually what this would look like is your opponent castles very early and you decide, you know what, I'm going to attack the king. I'm going to start pushing my pawns and generate an attack. The issue if you do it too early before you develop your pieces is what's going to happen is you're not going to have enough firepower to actually do anything productive. And it's your king that's going to be coming under attack, even though you're trying to attack your opponent's king. So as an example, if we just strike with g5 immediately, we're going to play g4, we're going to play h5 and push these pawns right away. If your opponent is smart, they will immediately open up the center. And let's just say you continue with your plan. They're going to start attacking you now because they have developed more pieces and have already castled. And all of a sudden, now we have a problem, right? We can try to defend. They're going to push d5 on us. We can go back here. And it's actually white that is in the driver's seat here. We don't really have an attack. We've got our one random pawn here. What are we going to do with that guy? We're on the defensive. Our pieces are kind of awkward. And this is just not the way that you want to orchestrate an attack, okay? I used to do this a lot, and sometimes I still do. I get a little bit over ambitious and I just start attacking my opponent like, oh, let's go. Their king is there. Let's push the pawns. It's usually almost always better at least develop these pieces first, and then you can start pushing and attacking if an opportunity presents itself. That's going to be much more effective than just pushing the pawns right away without developing. All right, and for the last one on our list of the 10 worst plans, I figured we'd jump to the end game. But if you have an end game where you have an extra pawn and a king, sometimes people mistakenly think that the best thing to do is just start pushing that pawn right away, get it moving up the board so that you can try to, get a queen. The problem is if you do this, you take a completely winning position and you turn it into a draw in one move. I put the evaluation bar there so you can see it's completely winning for white. And as soon as you push the pawn, it's now a draw. So the idea that you need to push the pawn as quickly as possible in a king and pawn endgame like this is wrong. Okay, the correct plan is to lead with the king. It's a little bit unintuitive unless you've seen it before, so I just wanted to make sure I mention it. But lead with the king, you also gain opposition in this particular case, and after the king is in position, that's when the pawn is going to come later, all right? And the reason has to do with black is always going to be able to get opposition now, and you're never going to be able to make progress. And so if you haven't studied this, go check out some of my other videos on king and pawn endgames. I'll cover this in more depth, but just wanted to kind of reiterate and remind some of you guys, remember in these king and pawn endgames, try to get your king in front of the pawn. That's the winning plan, not the other way around. All right. Those are 10 of the worst plans in chess. I hope you learned what not to do, and maybe you can avoid some of these mistakes in your games going forward. Remember, vote in the comments. How many pawns do you think are in here? If anybody gets it exactly right, you'll get a free course, and I'll reach out to you if I see the correct answer. And by the way, while we're talking about the courses, they are still on sale for the month of August, 50% off. Just use code NEWBABY at checkout and make sure you take advantage of that if you haven't already. But having said that, stay sharp, play smart, and take care.